states on the Pacific coast. It's 400 feet deep, 186 miles long, and has a water storage capacity of 27 million acres. Over 3 million people visit Lake Powell. The average length of the stay is 4.5 days, longer than any other federal park. Lake Powell was formed when the Glen Canyon Dam was completed on the Colorado River in 1963, and it took 17 years to reach its full pool. I'm not sure it's been after that. Glen Canyon Dam creates Lake Powell and rises 710 feet above the Colorado River. Glen Canyon Power Plant has 8 generators and a combined capacity of close to 1.3 kilowatts. Lake Powell was named after Civil War veteran John Wesley Powell, who led an expedition in wooden boats down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon in 1869. I can't imagine what that adventure would have been like in 1869. Rainbow Bridge is the largest natural bridge. It receives hundreds of thousands of visitors each year, about 50 miles down the lake. And the lake houses a number of different visitor facilities, marinas, and different concessions where people will get the lake. So with that, let me turn the time to Russ, who will lead us for the rest of our speakers, and we'll proceed.
Okay. The program committee wanted to do what's called Topical Tuesday. So instead of having one speaker on one topic, we're going to have sort of a pro-con. And in doing that, I want to remind you that the 3 pillars of Rotary are service and social togetherness, and then the programs that we bring to each other and learn about the community and what's going on. This is certainly part of that legacy. Look, we're going to tackle a very difficult issue. It'll be very emotional. In the West, whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over, right? Okay. So everybody needs to be under that behavior. Look, every important issue that we tackle in our personal and our public lives are difficult issues, and they are balancing acts, necessarily weighing cost benefit, pros and cons, and alternatives. And if you think an issue is simple and you know exactly the right answer, you either are ill-informed or you're not bringing your mature adult judgment to the issue. Difficult problems are the ones that we call to our highest characteristics to address. And look, this is a big project. I'm going to give you just a few facts here in just a minute. $2 billion, maybe $3 billion project. It affects the entire south part of the state of Utah and the entire budget of the state of Utah. But think about it. History is littered with good ideas that did not get implemented. Think about it. The MX missile. Remember that? We're going to run these tracks around the western Utah and eastern Nevada and hide MX missiles underneath bunkers and fool the Russians so they couldn't find out what the missiles were. It was an interesting idea. It did not get off the ground because of the public deliberation that occurred. Now, another one might be something like damming the Colorado River inside the Grand Canyon, at Marble Canyon. That was a proposal that did not make its way into fruition, and most of us that have been on the Grand Canyon and the river appreciate the fact that there's not a third dam inside the Grand Canyon. There's another one that did get off the ground, the pumps in the Great Salt Lake. Okay? Turned out they weren't needed after all. But that's not something we knew at the time. Now, just so you don't get on your high horse and assume that every project is bad, there's a bunch of them that did get off the ground. The interstate highway system, the transcontinental railroad, all of the harbors, bridges, airports, the National Agricultural College System, the GI Bill, all of the research that we do, our national defense. These things are deliberated as public policy, and we make decisions based on cost benefit, and they have brought us amazing returns. So you can't just say big project bad, big project good. It's a mix, and it is a mix with the Lake Powell Pipeline. Okay, I want you to keep an open mind as you hear these facts. Now, let me read a brief of the project because each of these gentlemen, Zach Frankel could speak for 2 hours on this easily. Joel Williams could speak for a couple more hours. They're forcing them into a small space of time. So I'm going to just give you a quick synopsis. You have a map on your table. Pass those maps around and help you visualize what's going on with the Lake Powell Pipeline. Here it is. In 2006, the state legislature passed what's called the Lake Powell Pipeline Development Act. 2006, 10 years ago. And it set up that the Board of Water Resources would evaluate and work with the Kane County and Washington County Water Conservancy districts to design and evaluate bringing water from Lake Powell, which is on the southeast corner of the state, across the Arizona-Utah border and deliver it to the southwest corner of the state, 140 miles. It's going to be run through a pipeline that's 69 inches in diameter, big pipeline, not quite big enough for Christians to stand up in, but plenty for me. Okay, so it's a big pipeline. It's going to gain and lose 2,000 feet of elevation. You have to pump water uphill. It's going to generate electricity coming downhill. The relative elevation between Lake Powell and St. George area is about 500 feet. But in the meantime, you've got to go up and down. And you have to use energy to pump it up. So you have to have transmission lines along there in order to deliver energy to pumps and receive energy from the turbines that are going to be generating some of that power. I'm going to hit the highlights here. It's going to deliver about 85,000 85,000 acre feet of water. Who knows what an acre foot is? Farmers? 1 acre, 1 foot feet. It takes about an acre foot of water for 3 or 4 households in Utah. 85,000 acre feet times 4 is about 250,000 households that this can supply. There are currently 160,000 residents in Washington County. The projection is by 2050, 30 years from now, there will be 600,000. That's a 400% increase. How will they survive? Will they drink? How will they survive? That's the question. These are big projects. They have a lot of lead time. This is an intergenerational project. The current legislature, the current state of Utah will be putting money into it, hopefully getting money back over time from users. But the utilization of this will outlive everybody in this way. Our children's children will be doing this, much like we are right now with the Central Utah Water Project. The water that you drink probably came from the east side of the Wasatch Region because of that kind of a project. So it's not good or bad because it's a project. It's not good or bad because it's big. It's not good or bad because it's complicated or expensive. It's good or bad based upon our collective public policy. All right, a couple of, let me see if I've got some of the highlights here. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that Joel Williams has brought with him a couple of guests. One of them is John Friedel. John just came over from Colorado where he did a similar project, about 50 miles as I understand, and his expertise is being hired on to help with that. And then, of course, we have Barbara Ewell, and Barbara is with the, is it Kane County Water Conservancy? Washington County Water Conservancy District, which is one of the 3 governmental entities. Okay, am I going too fast? I know you don't want to hear from me. You want to hear from these guys. I'm working on it. I'm trying to set the table. Okay. So thank you for them. Let me just introduce Joe is currently Assistant Director of the Utah Division of Water Resources. He has been in the division for 9 years and previously worked for RB&G Engineering. He has a BS and an MS degree in civil engineering with an emphasis in water resources from Brigham Young University. And Joe lives with his wife and children in Provo, and he likes all kinds of outdoor stuff, biking, hiking, and camping. All right, on the other side of the equation is our representative, Zach Frankel. Zach is the founder and executive director of the Utah Rivers Council. And Zach is an outspoken critic of the project, and we're trying to bring these pros on. In keeping with the football tradition of Super Bowl Sunday, I flipped a coin, and I decided that we would have Zach speak first for about 10 minutes and kind of give you an overview of his concerns about the project. And then we're going to have Joel speak about 10 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to questions. All right, so we can have a conversation with each other. All right, informative, civil, mature. Zach is the, I told you, he's the founder and executive director. He started the organization in 1995, about 20 years ago now. That's a long time, Zach. He has a BS in biology at the University of Utah. He's been working on water education and conservation across the Americas for 25 years. He successfully defeated the proposed dam on the Diamond Fork River in 1997, and he authored Utah's first water conservation legislation. It's called the Utah Water Conservancy Plan Act. He's been very active in this, fully involved. He's removed 2 proposed dams from that being constructed on the Bear River. He's an avid outdoorsman. He's done hiking, paddling, backcountry, skiing, cycling, and I really appreciate Zach making the effort. He had a bicycle accident recently, and he still is willing to prevail and come on and address us. So I'm going to turn the time over to Zach. He's going to try to give us his perspective in 10 minutes. Joel, 10 minutes. Floyd's going to run the microphone back and forth when it's Q&A time. And thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me to speak. So I was raised in a household where we were taught to ask lots of questions. I have 2 boys, and we're teaching them to ask lots of questions, which can be, not so great as a parent sometimes. But I'm here today to ask some questions. So let's take a little trip on the Lake Powell Pipeline. So you can see this Google map of the Lake Powell Pipeline from on the right, Glen Canyon down to Lake Powell, across this red line, which is the Lake Powell Pipeline. So if we look a little closer and we go on this trip, we get a sense of how big this project is. This is a 140-mile long pipeline. It's a massive project. And cost estimates are $1, $2, $2.5, $3 billion. It depends on what year you look at the dollars in the most recent engineering studies. One of the questions I have is about water use. If you look at the documents, they show on the right there, you're looking at per person water use. And according to the documents, Washington County's water use is 328 gallons per person per day. So the national average is about 150 for municipal and industrial use. We're not talking about agriculture at all. This is not an agricultural project. And you can see the first blue line to the left, the bar graph, is Las Vegas at 223. So Las Vegas is using less water than the St. George area for municipal and industrial use. Incidentally, the Utah, the second orange bar you see there at 295, that's the average of Utah cities, according to the State Division of Water Resources when they based that year in 2000. So you can see some of the other cities there. Austin's at 180, Denver's at 168, Albuquerque's at 150. So the question is, can we save more water in the St. George area? And when you look at it, the first thing, there was an audit done that came out in 2015 by the Legislative Auditor General. And they answered this question, and their observation was that absolutely yes. Because the water conservation goal for Utah is to reduce our water use from 295 to 220 in the year 2025. Right now, the water conservation goal, there is nothing after 2025. There's no water conservation goals whatsoever. So between 2025 and 2060, we're not going to save any water. We just haven't, as a state, gotten around to saying let's save more water. The auditors pointed that out as a problem, and it also compared St. George's water use with Las Vegas, as I just did. And you can see that Las Vegas's water conservation goal is to get to 199 gallons used by every man, woman, and child in Las Vegas every day of the year. So they want to reduce it down to 199 by the year 2035. Whereas the water conservation goal in St. George is to reduce it to 292, but not until the year 2060. Can we reduce that water use sooner and make the goal happen sooner? Now, if I look at the revenue stream of the Washington County Water District, according to the audited financial statement, well, I can see right away, there's a good way to save water. Let me just point this out. You can see that the property taxes are shown there in red. Those are the tax revenue collected by the water district on the value of homes and businesses inside Washington County. And then in green, you can see the water rates that are collected, just 28% of total revenue. So you can see they're collecting more property tax money than they are collecting water rates. So I would ask the question, if Rocky Mountain Power and Questar and frankly our telephones and our cable television can pay for their revenues, their operations, and the cost of delivering those commodities in their bills, why can't the water district? And we'd like to see the property taxes phased out, and we'd like to see water rates increase. We'd like to see the users pay for water. I approached by people who start a conversation with me by apologizing for having a lawn, which is always hilarious to me. Because I have a lawn too, and I don't care whether you have a lawn. All I ask is that I don't have to pay for your water use. And if I'm conscientious about my water use, I still might be paying for my neighbor to use water, or worse yet, wastewater, by paying property taxes to lower the price of water. And that's effectively what the property tax does. Let's just take a look at the water rates across the West. So you can see we finally finished our journey to the Lake Powell Pipeline terminus. So what you're looking at here is the water rate for the city of Seattle. On the bottom axis, on the x-axis, is the water that a homeowner in Seattle pays or uses during the month of July. So they start off at 0 gallons on the 1st of July, and they march to the right, and they pay more as they use more water. And so on the y-axis is the price they pay. So they start off paying about $5 per 1,000 gallons. And then they get to about 4,800 gallons of water, and they pay over $7 with that next gallon for each 1,000 gallons they use, until they get to about 14,000 gallons, and then they pay $15 per 1,000 gallons. And the homeowner is responding by trying to stay away from that vertical wall. They don't want to pay $15.78 per 1,000 gallons, right? That's just basic market economics. And you can see that many of the Western cities have adopted different strategies, but all of which utilize this idea of pricing. And again, you see this in energy and electricity and in natural gas markets as well. Not everybody does it. So you can also see these water drops is there's this trend, the cheaper the commodity gets, in this case water, the more people use. Basic fiscal economics, which most of us, I imagine, would embrace. But here's the water rates in St. George. And so that property tax, you can see, raises a question, how much is it suppressing the price of water? And then how much is it increasing the water use? So that's a simple question. How much water could we save if we phased out the property tax. We did a study that answered that. I don't have time to get into it, but we sure would love to see some more analysis about how much water could be saved. So I'm just going to rush through this really quickly. You can see I'm getting close to my time here. So this is the work of many economists who have looked at this issue of repayment. As Russell mentioned, the way that Lake Powell Pipeline financing is going to work is that the state of Utah, i.e. the Utah taxpayer, is going to act as the bank to pay for the construction of the project, whatever its cost is. And then once it's constructed, a loan will be established with the recipients of the water to repay those construction costs over 50 years with interest, just basically like a mortgage. And so this is a test here. So if this is the revenue stream of the Washington County Water District, this is what the economists believe the net revenues were of this water district, why then the debt payments, of course, should be a fraction of those revenues, right? Basic question here, can they afford it? And that should be about the annual debt payments, that bar there, back to the Utah taxpayers so that we can make sure that however much the project costs, we can get repaid. The problem is that the economists looked at it, they asked the question, how much is the construction going to cost? And what will the loan payments be like? So they looked at the two alternative cost estimates out of the official documents, $1.4 billion and $3.2 billion. And they found that over 50 years with a nominal interest rate, the debt payments are not a fraction of the revenues, they're a multiplier. Now, before you say, oh, maybe they didn't factor into the growth in the community that is slated to occur, they actually did build a really complicated model which factored in the increase in growth, the new households coming in, and the increase in revenues from those households in property taxes and water rates. Of course, there's an increase in revenues from that growth, but there's of course an increase in costs in providing water and also in billing all the homeowners and collecting those revenues. So they built this model and they found that it will require huge increases in water rates and property taxes and impact fees to repay. So the real question is the project really necessary? This was the forecast of how much water, as Russell sort of referenced, is required over the period from 2009 to 2060. And that is, the blue line is how much water is inside Washington County in the municipal sector. The problem is, we're not thinking about the fact that about 80 to 85% of the water we use in Utah is for agriculture. You know, if we were here in this building, maybe 100 years ago, 150 years ago, of course, building, we wouldn't be able to see all these buildings around us. We'd see farmland, because much of Salt Lake County used to be farmland. That's partly why we moved here, was to farm and produce our own local crops. But of course, the farmlands of Salt Lake County are mostly gone, and the water is slowly being transferred to the municipal sector. If there's really going to be another 500,000 or 600,000 people inside Washington County, this green bar shows how much agricultural water there is. There's additional water in this orange sector that local cities have as well. So I wouldn't want to stand up here and say to you that Washington County doesn't need more water in the future. It does, especially if these growth estimates are accurate. But the question is, can we change the water demand through water conservation? Those purple and blue lines I just put on there are what will happen if those water rates increase as a function of trying to repay this debt that you and I and everybody else in Utah will pay for the project. Demand will go down, right? If you went home and your water bill doubled or tripled or quadrupled, why, it would affect your behavior about how you use water most likely. Well, taken as a population, Washington County's water use is likely to decline. So the main question is, do we really need? And with that, I want to thank you for your time, again, for inviting me to speak to our people. Thank you.
stuff. Joel, you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Come on up and teach us about the other side of the equation. And I really respect you guys for being able to nail it into a nutshell like this. Joel, please.
Utah flags on my way.
Thank you. I want to thank the Rotary Club for having us to the luncheon today. This is a neat group and something that I didn't know a lot about. Floyd educated me a little bit on Club 24 and some of the changes that have occurred recently. I think it's admirable to the way you approach an issue such as this Lake Powell Pipeline, saying, yes, let's hear from two different sides. I had a history professor in college that I appreciated. He wanted us to look at each event in history from two opposing perspectives. And you learn a lot realizing, okay, there's more than one way to look at a project or any issue, to be honest. And I appreciate Zach Frankel for his views and his involvement. He has come to Board of Water Resources meetings, he's attended public open houses about the project, and that's what we need is involvement to be able to have these views be heard and have the conversations that need to happen. I want to talk a little bit about the state's perspective on this project. Where we come, and I think Russ hinted at it, is you look at the governor's office provides us with a population forecast. And they say, here's the projected population, and you guys plan to meet that water need. So as we looked across the state, the area, and it was hinted at, that with the fastest growth and the least amount of water, Washington County. And as we looked at options to meet that need, we had settled on Lake Powell Pipeline as the most reliable option to meet that future water need. And that the success of that community will depend on having a safe and reliable water supply. As we look at the ways to meet the water need, many of the things that Zach mentioned are instrumental in meeting that need. The first being conservation. Washington County was the first county in the state to meet their 25% conservation goal. And they've now set their sights on an additional 10% conservation above that. They've implemented a impact fee reduction for developers that come into the area to say, if you'll put in water-wise landscaping in your new developments, you'll have a reduction in your impact fees. And developers are taking up that option, and we're seeing a lot of new developments that include completely water-wise landscaping. So if you see the bar graph, their current use is represented in blue, and they are currently using 85% of their supply. And there is that surplus would represent the 15% that they're not using, which is nice to have as a cushion. Then the local projects are projects that they are already planning on pursuing. I'll have a slide that'll show a couple of those projects. And then that additional need would be met with Lake Powell Pipeline. As I mentioned, the county had met their 25% water conservation goal and is pursuing additional conservation. I've got copies of this flyer that you see there. It's probably too hard to read on the screen, but I've got copies over there near the door on that table over there, that if you'd like to see this in more detail, some of the efforts that they're doing with their conservation garden and community classes and ways to pursue water-wise landscaping and reduce water use. Some of the local projects that they will pursue as part of their plan to get the most out of the resources that are available to them: the Ash Creek project, groundwater recharge and recovery, and then arsenic treatment. Some of these projects are things that they've had in their long-term plan and they will pursue, but they will won't get them to where they need to be to meet the future demand. One interesting point is comparing Salt Lake City with Washington County. If we look on the right side, Salt Lake City has a variety of sources, Provo River, the Central Utah Project, Ontario Tunnel, Bill Cotton Retaining, a variety of sources to depend on for their water supply. In Washington County, they have one source, the Virgin River Basin, and all of their water has to come out of that basin. And if you look at other communities across the nation, one of the things that's being talked about is the importance of diversity in your water supply, having more than one source to be able to meet changing conditions with climate change or with drought. And this project would help because you're bringing in water from another basin. Agricultural conversion, we feel, is not the solution. There is water in the area, as Zach pointed out, that is used for agriculture. But it's not the state's intention or the county's intention to tell the farmers they can no longer farm and to kick them off their land so that water can be taken for residential use. We know that conversion takes place over time on a free market basis, willing buyer, willing seller. As the farmer sells land, that land then, that water can then go to provide for residents. And one other issue with the agricultural water, even if the state were to say, you know what, we're going to take all that agricultural water, it's very low quality, high total dissolved solids, and would require expensive treatment. In many cases in the area, reverse osmosis, which has its own environmental issues with producing brine and the great expense that would actually cost more than the Lake Powell Pipeline. The proposal would be to pump 86,000 acre-feet of water from Lake Powell to Washington and King counties. As been mentioned, the line is 140 miles, 5 pumping stations going up to 2,000 feet, and then 5 inline hydropower stations as you descend 2,600 feet to St. George. 2 hydropower generation facilities where one of them is located at the Hurricane Cliffs, where you'd have a large opportunity, a large head loss to generate some significant power that would all help offset the cost. Coming back again to why would Washington County and I guess Southern Utah in general need this project? One is that reliability that I hinted at. Having a single source can be difficult if something were to happen with the source they have on the Virgin River. The issue with one of their storage reservoirs. Another reason would be for drought protection. I remember a few years ago, and it's interesting to watch. I love the snow falling right now. I'm thinking, okay, this is our water supply for the coming year that's falling around us. Given the hydrologic circumstances, you watch how the storms impact the state. Washington County, we watched a few years ago that the Virgin River was experiencing about 30% of their normal stream flow one spring, and you look across to the Colorado River and it was at 100% of its normal stream flow. And so there are benefits to regional diversity of having, if one region is in a drought, bring in water from another region to help compensate. And then looking ahead to future generations, I hear people say, well, we don't need this project. And I say, you're right, you don't need it right now. As you can see, they're only using 85% of their current supply. It's future generations that will need it. Looking at where this water would come from, the state already has the water rights for the water for this project, and it's part of Utah's allocation of the Colorado River. The left-hand column shows kind of the upper and lower basin allocations. And then, so the upper basin allocation of 6 million acre feet, we know that Utah's is about 1.6 million. That value didn't translate on the graph. And the unused allocation would be 400,000 acre feet. And of that, the Lake Powell Pipeline would use 86,000. So as you look at the flow of the Colorado River, we're talking about 0.5% of the flow of the river for this project. Where are we in the process right now? This water droplet would show where we are currently, but if you look at the first step, the Development Act was passed in 2006. For the last 10 years, we've been preparing thousands and thousands of pages of environmental research and project planning documents that will be presented to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. We are currently finalizing the preparation of those documents so that they can start the NEPA process. FERC will manage the NEPA process, and we expect to see a record decision from FERC and the federal agencies that would include the Bureau of Land Management, Bureau of Reclamation. There will be a record decision in the next few years, and then at that point we will be able to begin design and determining financing the project and proceeding to construction. Project is estimated, our current estimates have it between 1.1 and 1.8 billion, depending on which alignment. There's still a lot of unknowns, and we're early in the process. We haven't even got a record of decision from the federal government yet on the NEPA considerations for this project. But and the engineering at this point is very preliminary. I'll finish up so we can open it up for some questions here. Thank you, Russ. The way that it would be repaid would be a combination of water rates, property taxes, and impact fees, and that would be up to the local districts to determine the ratios there and how that would come together. The benefits to the project would be helping a stable economy, job creation, education, safety, and then quality of life. And really, when we're talking about the water project, we're talking about providing for the future generations. Thank you.
Glenn, do you have a question?
Yeah, I read an analysis of the Colorado River and the usage of the whole thing. In this article, it said that the water for the Colorado River, I'm not talking about the specific states, was actually over committed. That there was more commitment to the water than the river had.
Glenn wants to know if the Colorado River is already overcommitted to the upper and lower regions and to Mexico, and whether or not there is actually this extra water that we can draw out of the system. I don't know. Joel? Zach?
Yeah, there's this classic story of when they developed the Colorado River Compact in the 20s, which was the law that 7 states got together and agreed who gets how much. They based the amount of water on the gauge in that year, which was an abnormally high year. Whoops. Like borrowing money from a bank and you think you have more than you really do. So that made a big problem, and you ask a simple question and everything in water has a complicated answer, but that's the simplest answer I can provide. Absolutely yes. Water is overcommitted. The lower basin is using more than they are allocated to have under that compact agreement. The upper basin, most of the states are not using that full share yet.
Okay, that was Utah River Council's perspective. Question? Yes?
Yeah,
Great.
but just could you make it clear, for the repayment of this debt, which is going to be over 50-year period, will all Utahns pay for that, or is it just those in the St. George area? Just a quick answer.
Rory wants to know, where does the money come to repay it, Joel?
Great question, and we get a lot of people interested in that. The state has a revolving fund set up that we use to fund water projects all over the state. Board of Water Resources have been doing water projects for the last 70 years, over 1,400 projects where money is loaned out, and some of that money does come from sales tax. So they say, okay, yeah, we're all paying into that. That goes out to fund a project, and then that money is repaid, and that hence the revolving loan that can then go out to fund other projects. So it would be the same situation with Lake Powell Pipeline. We would assume that the state would help provide some of that funding up front from these revolving funds, and then that money would be paid back with interest to the state to be used on other projects.
From all taxpayers, is that correct?
It would include sales tax from the state, which we always have.
Repayment.
Not the repayment, but that initial funding.
No,
The repayment would only come from the 2 districts using the water.
The repayment would come from the 2 districts.
Correct.
Okay, Zach, do you have anything like to share on that?
Yeah, we studied that very carefully, and the state treasurer said that bonds will have to be issued by the state of Utah at least $1 billion. If it's $2 billion, the state taxpayer is essentially paying for it. And then the recipients of the water, according to the law, have to repay. So it's as if the Utah taxpayer is the bank paying for the construction costs up front to build the project. And then repayment occurs through recipients. Sales taxes is not going to pay the full cost because the sales taxes are too small to repay.
Okay, I want everybody to know that there's about a 1.5-year planning window and a 5.5-year construction window. So if we start today, the pipeline wouldn't come online until about 2026. Doctor?
Is this a done deal, or is there decision making yet to be done, and who decides?
Joe, is this a done deal? What's going to happen?
Great question. We are currently, we don't have a record of decision from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the other federal agencies that they're reviewing the NEPA documents. They'll be doing this over the next couple of years. Until we get a record of decision, I can't say that it's a done deal, but I feel that we're making good progress in getting them the information they need and analyzing, what mitigation would be required. We don't see anything that would make the project infeasible.
Greta, last question.
Well, one of the biggest differences in the presentations was Zach showing figures showing that this could never be repaid, and you assuming it could be repaid, that that's not even an issue. Can you respond to why there's such a difference in the way that you're looking at
Why
it?
is there a difference in accounting between I can afford it and I can't afford it? Joel,
When we look at Washington County at the time they built the Quail Creek project, they came to the Board of Water Resources for funding, and at the time, the project would have cost about 30% of their tax base in the county, a significant chunk of their tax base. When we look at the Lake Powell Pipeline right now and compare it to their tax base, it would be about 15% of their tax base. So at the time, there was a similar question: how will they ever pay for Quail Creek? How can we do this? They actually paid it off early because of the growth that they're experiencing down there.
I wonder if Zach can answer.
And then we'll put it back.
The answer to the question is that there is no viable repayment plan that has been prepared outside of these 22 PhD economists who found that it can't be repaid. If we assume the project costs $1 billion, it's essentially like hiring a contractor to redo your kitchen, and he says it's 10,000, and you're like, excellent, and you're just crossing your fingers that it is, and then it turns out to be 20 or 30. So in other words, if the Lake Powell Pipeline turns into a $3 billion project, why, of course, it's unlikely the taxpayer would be repaid. Construction projects can be expensive. The tax dollars that were estimated for the project costs are pretty old. I think the economic analysis from the documents is 2010, so it's already 6 years old. Or without a repayment plan, our biggest concern is what, if we can't repay? If they can't repay, what if we never get paid back?
It's the biggest public question right now in the state of Utah. John, I'm sorry, we're going to have to stop. We have to write a book to Frankel School. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.